Hello, once again. I am Doc Rotten, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net. And tonight we're reviewing Lovecraft Country, episode 7, titled I Am. I Am. All right, let's find out who's with us. Starting off with award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore.
What's up? I'm all about the sci-fi genre we got into this week, right?
Yes, yeah, we do get into sci-fi this time. This is pretty amazing. All right, also joining us is podcasting rockstar and international cosplay queen, Vanessa Thompson.
We are Hippolyta. Man, I love this episode. And the space travel and the sci-fi and all of it. Loved it.
All kinds of craziness. This is a wacky episode, a wacky episode. You're going to stick around for this. All right. Also joining us is a special guest host all the way from Heroes and Droid. It's Christopher Slattery, the Slattman. How you doing, sir?
Good. I feel like this episode just needed Rod Sterling and it'd fit right into Twilight Zone.
Yes. Good
You're
call.
right. You're right. It probably would have worked out really well. This, one thing I noticed before we turn this over to our first impressions is that I forgot that we had an episode that was just all flashback, and we haven't really talked to all our characters, seen our characters for 2 weeks. And we were talking like on the pre-show is that, we caught up with everybody in the first, 15 minutes. And yeah, I totally forgot. Right. And it was like really cool to do that. So interesting stuff. So, all right, what we do here is we're going to talk about the episode. We're going to give our first impressions, and then we're going to chat. And then we're going to give our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene. You want to stick around for that. That's what it's all about. Stick around. It's toward the end. But first, what are we actually talking about? And you'll see the sci-fi here in just a second with the wonderful picture I chose of Hippolyta. This is episode 7, I Am. It aired September 27th on HBO. It was directed by Charlotte Sieling and written by Shannon Houston. Of course, it's developed by Misha Green. And Hippolyta's relentless search for answers takes her on a multi-dimensional journey of self-discovery as Atticus heads to St. Louis to consult an old family friend. And that's only the half of it. This episode has a lot, but let's find out what our first impressions were. And Slattman, you're up first.
So when I first watched it, my very first impressions were a lot of confusion, a lot of what the hell did I just watch, and a lot of was that really an important, like, what was that really important to what we need, like, to the story? However, the more that I sit there and I think about it, it's a great episode. Like my first, the first reaction I had was kind of like, WTF, what did I just watch? But yeah, no, it's still a great episode. It does bring in a lot more questions, I feel like, than answers. Like, I feel like every single episode has done. But
that's true.
And considering there's 3 episodes left, we need to be starting. There need to be some answers at some point. But it's good. It's really good. It's the acting is very well done, except for kind of one scene that I was just kind of like on. And then and it's not even like a speaking scene. It's just kind of a situation scene. Okay. I don't want to get into spoilers yet, though. But it's well acted. And a majority of the acting is done by one actress, and she does a fantastic job. And I loved the variety that we get in this episode from. There's so much color and there's so much happening, and it's awesome. The soundtrack is, I feel like, getting back on point, and it was nice to see our characters again.
Yeah, Aunjaunue Ellis plays Hippolyta Freeman, and she does a tremendous job. She gives this character a lot of depth. We're going to talk about that a lot tonight. All right, up next is Vanessa. Vanessa, what is your first impression of I Am?
Oh, I loved it. I am so glad Hippolyta got her moment in the sun, and we really got to dive into her character and who she is and how she's become the way she is. I loved seeing the way that she traveled through these different, moments and got to see herself in different times. And it was just really, really touching to me, her story. I was very emotional several times. She had a few revelations there towards the end that just wrecked me. And visually, I just thought this was wonderful. I love the sci-fi bent. The comparison to the Twilight Zone is perfect. That's just such a great way to frame this episode. And I absolutely love the score. They are doing such an excellent job with putting people of color in places where you just would never see them before and surrounding them with such light and music and sound that, it makes me so incredibly happy to see, especially right now. There's a lot of things going on in the world that don't make us too happy. And it's really nice to have something just to lose yourself in, right? Just to escape into, even if it's just for an hour, and to really, feel something out of the norm. And this episode really did that for me.
Excellent. I can't agree with you more. All right, Christopher G. Moore, what is your first impression of I Am?
I really, really enjoyed this. And even though it's a very Hippolyta focused episode, we still get a few powerful scenes with some of the other characters, especially with Atticus and his dad. There's that whole confrontation scene, which is, it's painful to watch. And then you can also see sort of like that Atticus's character. It's less about trying to, I guess, being offensive towards his dad, and more about him being beat, growing up for not being strong or being considered weak, or the kind of things that it's just a powerful scene to watch, a hard scene to watch, but a powerful scene to watch. And you can also sort of see how Atticus's dad has some kind of issues with, he's sort of at this point where he's kind of accepting who he is, but at the same time, he's also worrisome about how people may see that outside of that, because it's hard enough being a black man, but being a gay black man in that time period, or even today nowadays. But yeah, I think once we get the Hippolyta stuff, or Hippolyta, what's it, Lita or Lida? Hippolyta. Okay. Once we get to that, I think, the I Am, which is basically the Spartacus thing, I am Spartacus, but with a female protagonist. And we get to see sort of like her, you guys compared it to Twilight Zone, but I considered it more like Fantasy Island, or maybe Fantasy Planet is a better version.
To Outer Limits. Yeah.
But Fantasy Island, you get to sort of you get to meet people you saw before who were alive. Fantasy Island, you got to go have these experiences you always wanted. And that's what happens. We get the whole segment where she's like dancing with Josephine Baker, and Frida Kahlo shows up. You get to sort of see that element of how sometimes, in order for some people to be free, they have to get outside the U.S., which I'm sure a lot of people want to do right now, and then also just the sci-fi aspect, and when the sci-fi warrior with the big afro thing, that visually is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and I really want to see a spin-off just of that universe.
Hell yeah.
Of these sort of Amazonian like sci-fi women. I really want to see somebody cosplay as that. And then we also get the sort of the whole we get to sort of see like we see a lot of these sort of like action movies that take place in these period pieces, whether it's Spartacus or Braveheart what's the one with Russell Crowe, Gladiator, which she even has that speech that you see in every one of those films. There's like one part where she's fighting as that character, and I yearly laughed out loud and clapped for her. Because she gets to have that moment that most of these like Arnold Schwarzenegger type characters get to do. And it's really cool to see this actress who we've seen throughout all these episodes, who's been that sort of like wonderful wife who's always wanting to go on these adventures with her husband. And she's, she really deserves, this whole life she's felt like, I love that there's a whole dialogue thing about being small,
right?
And I feel like, maybe a lot of us have sort of felt that sometimes, where life is bearing down on you and you feel like it's made you small, that you really want to go out and be I know as me, I always wish that I'd gone to film school. I wish I'd went to LA when I was younger instead of waiting until later in life to do that. And you feel like, was I allowing, parental figures to do that? And so you see all these different elements of this woman, that she's a very strong woman, but she's also sort of had to make her small throughout her whole life. And, whether it's based on race or whether it's based on the husband making her feel like that. And we get to see, we get to see George again, which is kind of nice. We kind of miss him a little bit.
Yes.
So yeah, it's visually, it's definitely out there. We go from like a period piece and what's it in like Paris or whatever, and then we go to like a period piece. Yeah, we go to like space. There's a whole sci-fi thing, and then we go to like this warrior tribe, which is loosely based on what are they called? The Dahomey Amazons, which is like a whole group that was a whole regiment of all-female military in the kingdom of Dahomey, which was in the present-day Republic of Benin. So I mean, it's just interesting how they also tie in a lot of these real elements of different things. So yeah, it's a really it's definitely puts the fantasy and fantastical, that's for sure, to where we even get to see basically the comic book acted out. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that sort of like, I think we all can sort of relate to a little bit if you've always had those dreams of what you want to do something and you feel like everybody's not really pushing you down to not go after those dreams. So yeah, it's a wonderful focus episode on Hippolyta that works really well.
Yeah, it really does. And there's a lot of other stuff going on too, like you said, with Montrose and also with Letty. There's, she shares the dream now. And my dog's snoring. Well, shares a dream, and of course there might be a little something with Junior Mr. Fix-It coming along. We don't know. It looks likely. So there's a lot to like about this episode. The sci-fi stuff at first turned me off a little bit. It took me a while to warm up to it, but what really won me over was the character in it, and stunning visuals. You mentioned the alien character. Was it Beyond
Say?
Yeah,
like C'est la vie, and Beyond, which I was listening to the podcast they based on the show, and I was like, at first I thought they said that Beyonce was playing that character, and like, no, it's not her. But I was like, that's kind of cool that they based this sci-fi character with this funny name that's based on a celebrity,
Yep.
So.
And so that visual alone, the various different versions of it is remarkable, and I'll remember that for quite a bit. But the character moments with Hippolyta as she goes back into other characters, they mean so much, especially for this character. I mean, there's a lot to say socially, but it's even more amplified for our character here, because when she's dancing with Josephine Baker, it's just the dreams that she had, and she sacrificed those dreams to marry they might have been sacrificed. She kind of give a hint that they were sacrificed long before that because of her surroundings. A lot of times it was white people, but not all the time. Sometimes it was just society itself. and then when she goes back to the warrior time, the sword and sandals, but it's not really that far back, right? It's not that far back, even though it feels like it from her side. It's more about being more, even being a woman can be more than what is perceived by man, right? And it really doesn't have as much to do about color here, about her being a woman. So there's a lot going on here that I really appreciated and really dug with our character as she realized more about herself. And then, she ends up back in George's arms, and that comes to yet another revelation, which of course, Vanessa, I think that's the revelation you were talking about. That was heartbreaking when she realizes what was happening there. And of course, George did too. So it was pretty rough. And then of course she gets to live out her dreams with George in sci-fi land and do basically, like you said, the comic book. And I didn't realize it until they showed the comic book there at the end underneath the dead police officer. And I'm like, oh no, that's what they were doing. I didn't get it. So a lot of really cool stuff going on here. A lot of great visuals. And it's definitely the sci-fi episode. We were talking about, we got the monster episode, we got the cult episode, we got the haunted house episode. Now we got the sci-fi episode. Each one is another subgenre of this genre that we love. So it's really, really kind of wonderful in that way when you take it in that way. And of course, it always has the themes that were, that the show's really embodying in almost a perfect way. This show is remarkable in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. It just impresses me episode after episode how well they're tackling subjects that are paralleling what is going on currently for us. At the end, the spoken word poem going on talking about the Black woman as a myth, while we have things go like Breonna Taylor happening right in front of us, juxtaposed against the Black woman as a myth. Like how much more do they have to put it in someone's face, how people feel because of the way they are treated 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and today, exactly the same. And it's, that it's a heartbreaking thing to see, but they just have a way of every episode is carrying that weight while still giving us such beautiful adventure moments, sci-fi moments, fantasy moments that these characters get to live and be in. I'm really, really loving this series.
Well, and that speech is actually from a 1972 film called Space is the Place by experimental jazz musician Sun Ra. And you actually can go on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube. I watched a little bit of it. It's kind of trippy. It's really out there. But yeah, I love how, I almost look forward to every episode where they have like some kind of spoken word or some kind of thing from history that they sort of incorporate that always ties into the theme of what they're talking about, and because that's always, I think that's it's almost like it's part of their structure at this point, because just how that, even though this specific episode deals with a lot of futuristic type stuff, but even the tribe that she becomes a part of is almost like an amalgam. It's almost like Wakanda type thing.
Yeah, it did feel that way.
Yeah, because even when they're fighting against Confederate soldiers. So then there's the whole John Carter thing too, because John Carter was like a Confederate soldier.
Yeah.
Although she did say earlier on, it's like, I just want to kill a bunch of white people, whatever.
Yeah, that's the next scene that she goes into. It's like, we're killing white people,
killing all these Confederate soldiers. So yeah, I love, because sci-fi, even horror is always a sort of a good example of attacking certain subjects, sometimes even controversial subjects, but using it in the entertainment value of like a horror sci-fi. Sci-fi has always been like that, You can always tell a lot of things. Even Star Trek is always well known for race concept, stuff with the racism and stuff,
Definitely.
using characters, or even like sexual type stuff as well, where there's gender type problems.
Blade Runner comes to mind when you're talking
Blade Runner,
about
yeah,
this
there's
too.
sci-fi thing has always been popular at doing that, and I think this is also a good example of that, even though this is, I mean, compared to other episodes, this is way out there, when you got like, 9 foot tall, Afro futuristic superwoman.
Yeah, space dimensional travel.
Yeah, you got that, or you just, or then even just the whole, although it was kind of fun seeing Hippolyta, like, am I calling her Hippolyta?
Hippolyta.
Oh, why I keep saying the wrong way. Hippolyta. It was fun seeing her hanging with Josephine Baker, where she's just like, she's partying it up. She's flirting with men and women. There's a part where she even, sniffs cocaine. She's just living it up, and she just fits right in. It's kind of funny just seeing her previously where she's doing checklists for car trips for her family, and the next minute she's just like partying it up with the rest of them.
Well, you get to see her genius too. Like she's an extremely smart person.
Well, her math and science abilities and stuff, when she's trying to figure stuff out, whether it's dealing with that whole how that thing works, which supposedly you can actually, those coordinates are real. Supposedly one of those coordinates is actually in the middle of like Oklahoma or something. But yeah, or when she's trying to figure out the thing on the spaceship.
Yeah, well, it ties into the whole hidden figures thing, right? The women, black women, mathematicians, scientists who were used for their knowledge, but then never given the praise that they deserved, like Hippolyta naming that star and it being given to someone else.
Well, and the same thing also goes with like slavery, where sometimes the slaves would be named after other people and they'd lose their real names. And so you have that element too. So there's so many great things that they interweave into this, that there's so much meaning behind stuff, and other stuff, it's almost like it's an homage to a lot of sci-fi films or action films that we remember.
Yeah. And I also like that our characters are flawed, right? They're not perfect characters. Atticus has a very flawed moment in this episode with his dad. And Letty's had flawed moments, right? And she makes up for some of those flawed moments in this particular episode. It's really, and I think George we now knows really flawed, right? Who we have idolized probably in the first couple episodes, thinking he was the one star guiding them all. But so there's a lot going on, and I really like that complexity, like that depth, because Atticus has a lot to deal with now. That is a topic worth discussing. Even though it's uncomfortable to have your lead character embody those thoughts, right? Those negative thoughts. But it's important. It's important. So the point can be driven home. So I really appreciate that. Really like this is incredibly well written, intelligent, and brilliant, fascinating show. Just the visuals and the storytelling.
Well, and we even get a tie into Dracula.
Do we? What was that?
Because when she sort of figures out that she might be pregnant, she has a weird reaction to garlic. And I'm like,
yes.
Yeah.
It is a Dracula one. Wow.
I didn't even realize that.
The whole time I'm like, oh God, is she going to turn into a vampire by the end of this? Or maybe her baby's going to be a vampire.
That'll be something else right there.
And
now we have two new mysteries. You were talking about, maybe we got a few more questions than we got answers. Christina is saying that Ruby and her family are somehow involved in this, and there's a couple of ways that could be. And we also got Letty starting to dream about Atticus's great grandma or whatever, running out of the house with her seeing her now. And then we also have the mystery of the birthmark. It's it was on the back of his mom.
His back and her.
Yeah. I was like, how did that happen? And
his aunt, was it his aunt?
Was his aunt or his mom?
Or cousin?
Cousin?
I think it was cousin.
Yeah, but
blood relative.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure who we were seeing because it was so unclear. But
can I say that I ship Ruby and Christina? Like I'm totally on board for them.
Yeah,
I'm really loving that relationship a lot.
Well, although you do kind of, there is a little bit of a questionable element. Is it as consensual if somebody's trying to be someone else? You know,
She came clean.
but she did come clean about it. But still, there's kind of that weird thing about it. Yeah, but they do seem to have like an interesting relationship there.
Yeah.
she definitely catfished her, right? So.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing where you can actually become that person. It's a little bit different.
Well, you know,
in the online profile.
It is Lovecraft country. All right, this is the time. This is the time. We're going to wrap things up. We're going to give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. This is what you've been waiting for. Stick around for this. But before we do, if you're still here with us, first off, thank you. And please hit the subscribe button, hit the like or dislike. Hopefully you're hitting the like button. Hit the bell so you can be notified. Let us give us some comments. Let us know what we're getting right, what we're getting wrong, if we're missing a point, or if we maybe brought a point to the surface that you missed. We'd love to hear about that. Yeah. That's what we want to do. All right, so let's do this. Slattman, you're up first, sir. Give us your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
This is another great episode. I kind of agree with Doc. Like, a lot of the sci-fi stuff kind of took me a while to get into, but once I was in, I was stuck, and they've done such a great job of giving every character their moment to shine. And based on the previews for next episode, it looks like we're going to be doing that again, which is awesome. But they just keep nailing it. They keep pushing the story forward. To a point, they keep answering questions. But for every answer we get probably like 3 more questions.
Yep.
So
answer one, give us 3 more. Yep.
But the acting is still phenomenal. The score is getting better than what it was a couple episodes ago when I remember complaining about it. And the story is still great, and the characters are still great, and the subject matter is still great. So it's just another great entry into this series, and it's awesome to finally get time with Hippolyta, and we get to finally understand why she's done what she's done for the past 6 episodes, or I guess 5, because she wasn't really in the last one. But I'm gonna give this one probably a 4.5. And my favorite scene is probably the scene where she's cutting on, like, she's doing the math and everything to cut on the giant telescope, which turns into like a weird teleporty time machine.
Just call it a time machine to keep it track. It's a time machine.
More of an alternate universe.
A dimensional machine, yeah.
But it's worth mentioning that in one of the previous episodes, I don't remember which one, they mentioned something about needing to find the keys to a time machine, or needing to find like the spells for a time machine or anything. So I wonder if what Hippolyta has turned on will come back to us in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I do have to say, it kind of took me out a little bit when Atticus showed up out of nowhere to help with the police officers, because I didn't think that he could get there from St. Louis in time.
Like 7 hours, by the way.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Like that's the scene with that I was talking about earlier, where it's just kind of, it took me out of it a little, because it's just like,
It was convenient.
it's just like, oh, that's really convenient writing right there. Like,
well, at least they
Yeah.
explained how he found out. I'll give him that. I'll give him that. All right.
Yeah.
Vanessa, you're up next. Final thoughts, score, favorite scene.
I love this series. I think it's important to mention their representation of women alone, but women's bodies in this. The difference is the way that women are just celebrated, all different shapes, all different sizes, and they don't address it as a negative or a positive, just as being real. And that, especially in this episode, really was something that I picked up on. But all around, every episode is just fantastic. They stand alone so well, and they work together even better. And I really loved how we kind of got a little quick catch up with all our characters after the last episode. And I really like that it picked up with Atticus kind of just a little while after he had just had that call, right? Which set us into last week's episode. Hippolyta, just her story, all the women in the series, but her story talking about, shrinking. She's shrunk herself ever since she had that blow when she was young by her talent being given to someone else, her name being taken off of that, and how important her name is, and how historically that just resonates to, having ownership of your name, of yourself, of who you are, true freedom, which they discuss a lot in this episode. What is freedom? What does it actually feel like? I'm giving this one a 5.
Oh, nice.
I really feel like this whole season is just going to be a 5 overall from me, because every episode is just so wonderfully written, so wonderfully acted. And, even to the point where the actress who plays Hippolyta, her voice, the tone of her voice, the genteelness of her voice, the tenderness of her voice speaks volumes of her character. And just the way those things work together, phenomenal casting, right? Just phenomenal casting in this. And my favorite scene is, it begins with that moment where she's talking about how she's just shrunk herself almost into nothingness, and she's allowed this to happen to herself, and into her being the personification of her daughter's sci-fi comic book, this female heroine that travels throughout space that her daughter has created, and that has such a connection to George and to Hippolyta, and what that comic meant as they were going out on the road. That moment was so beautiful to me, seeing her like that, seeing her just represented at a time that you would never have seen a person of color in the 50s or 60s in a movie or a moment like that, right? There's nothing that you can find with that. And she's just radiating in that moment when she's found herself, and we have our Beyonce coming down to her. I love that scene.
Perfect. All right, Christopher G. Moore, what is your final thought, score, favorite scene for I Am?
Well, I think this episode really shows how they're really having fun with each one of these episodes, and sort of like taking us on a journey to different types of genres. With this one being the sci-fi, they pull out all the stops for it to create this wonderful world that Hippolyta sort of goes into. And at the same time, they also tie in historical stuff, like that one moment where she's driving and that woman on the motorcycle drives by. That's actually based on a real person named Bessie Stringfield, who was called the Motorcycle Queen of Miami.
Oh, wow.
Who began riding when she was 16, like 1920s. She was the first Black person to complete a solo cross-country motorcycle ride. And so you have somebody who's living by her own, thoughts and means and that kind of stuff, and doing what she wants to do. And I think that's what Hippolyta wants, that she's sort of like allowed herself to be small all these years and not go after these things. And even when things that she's tried to do has been taken away from her, like being able to name like a comet or asteroid or whatever. So so yeah, and how they sort of integrate all these different things, historical things, whether it's the hanging out with like Josephine Baker, and yeah, they even worked in Lady Marmalade,
yes,
in one scene, which works really well. So yeah, just how they, in this one episode, they attack so many different things, whether it's the normal sci-fi type stuff or whether it's the normal sort of like, people coming together as an army type stuff. And then they also go into the whole thing of like, even just simple things of conversations between a couple, and how like sometimes you get in relationships and sometimes when you become a wife and a mother, you sort of kind of lose some of your aspirations that you wanted to do when you were single. And you hope in relationships that they'll want to sort of help that along. And as somebody who's a woman or a Black woman, you have to deal with all these situations that sort of belittle you and don't allow you to go after the things that you want to go after. And I think this whole episode is an empowering thing. And I'm no Black woman, but it kind of empowered me as well, just watching it, because there's certain things that I wanted to do that I've allowed society, I've allowed family, I've allowed financial means to sort of like make me feel like I can't be bigger than what I am. And so it's great to see this character sort of be all these amazing things that she always sees in her head, but she doesn't allow herself to be. And it's one of those things to where you don't normally see like a mother character who's like, okay, I'm going to go off and take my journey now. And which I'm kind of worried about Dee now. But also when Atticus comes back with that book, I'm thinking Back to the Future when what's his name had that book of the almanac, the sports almanac. So I was like, is this going to allow him to know what's going to happen in the future? And did he actually go back to where he was, or is this an alternate?
Yeah, where did
timeline?
Atticus go?
Yeah, so I'm wondering.
That's right. We
Atticus.
don't know.
Yeah,
It'd be kind of weird if he's like in some kind of weird thing where aliens are taking over or something, Planet of the Apes or something, or
maybe
some kind of weird
first scene in the entire series.
Yeah. Oh, is that where he went?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if he's having to fight like
Snap.
the Cthulhu type monster, where it's like aliens are attacking. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that they could really do with this series that could be very interesting. So yeah, I think if I could have one criticism, and maybe it's just me overthinking, but I think when we finally get to see Hippolyta in sort of like this perfect version of what her daughter sort of embodied her as a cartoon, as a comic book character, this badass, Discover, I think she calls herself. Mm-hmm. Did you notice when she gets out of the ship, she comes out first, and then her husband comes out second?
Yes.
But when they meet these weird alien things, I think with their costumes and everything they were creating, the alien things were so CGI, it kind of took me out of it a little bit. To where I kind of wish that if they were really going for that sort of 50s or 60s aesthetic, then I kind of wish they went from like people in monster suits or something.
You wanted a man in suit.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe that's a weird thing to criticize about an episode, but I don't know. Something about that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful episode. So I think because of that, just that part, I'll have to give it a 4.5.
Okay.
Because I think everything else is hitting on full blast. And again, but I guess my favorite scene is when she shows up on that ship and the big sci-fi Amazonian Afro woman shows up, and I was clapping for that, because that visual alone is so cool. It felt very, and just to see that and sort of not, you probably see that in comic books, but just see that a visual form of it. I'm kind of, like I mentioned previously, I'm looking forward to seeing that like at
Cosplay,
cosplay,
yeah.
comic conventions, that kind of thing. I think although I will say that, like, I'll just say a brief second to that would be the scene where she does her final thing in the as part of that army.
Ah, yes.
How that ends, I literally laughed out loud and clapped. And that's the kind of thing you'd see if you go to see some Russell Crowe or Arnold Schwarzenegger film, and to see like a main, action hero being the Hippolyta character is amazing, especially when she's named after like a Greek god. So Amazonian warrior. So
yes.
But yeah, I'll say that the big sci-fi Afro-futuristic woman, I love that visual so much. That made me smile from ear to ear.
Visual of the year. Yeah, I'll keep this quick. It is a fun episode, very sci-fi based. You get a lot with Hippolyta, of course, and it's great because you really flesh out these supporting characters. We did the same thing with Ruby a few episodes back, and you really get to see more of them, and it's so much fun. But we also get little tender or not so tender moments with our other characters, depending on what's happening. We get a little bit of intrigue and mysteries planted here and there, a couple answers, maybe. So there's a lot going on. I loved it. I'm going to give it 4.5 as well. But I do want to say, before I give my favorite scene, for those who didn't realize it, I'm sure you did. But Jurnee Smollett, of course, played Diana Lance in The Birds of Prey. But the news is that we haven't shared yet, but you've probably heard this, is that Jonathan Majors has been cast in the Marvel Universe in Ant-Man 3. And rumor is, and it's almost all but confirmed, is he's going to play the big bad Kang the Conqueror, who is likely going to be a baddie that's going to be around for a number of movies. It's going to be great to see him in it, and Ant-Man too. There's it should be fun to have that juxtaposition between those funnier characters. All right, so my favorite scene. I hadn't done that. Favorite scene. I'm going to go. It's really hard not to choose the character moments you guys are the fancy moments that you guys chose, but I'm going to go with the Josephine Baker bit, and especially the ending of it when she's at that party and she's sharing a moment at the bar with Josephine Baker, a celebratory, right? Because she has now been accepted by them. She's definitely a part of them. She's and she's living her dream. And she's able to voice her frustration with her life, with the revelation of being small and stuff, or felt small. And it ends with her looking up and saying, "I am Hippolyta," right? Because she didn't say that at first. And for me, that was such a great moment for this character. That was a realization of who she is. And it, of course, it zips her away to another time. But the whole thing that's the first thing she thinks of is this particular dream and everything. I don't know. It really worked for me. It really worked for me. All right, so there you go. That's our review of Lovecraft Country episode 7. I Am. It might be our longest review yet, except for maybe the first one. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. Slattman, Vanessa, Christopher, G. More. Thank you for hanging out with me for the past 45 minutes to talk about Lovecraft Country.
Oh, this show keeps surprising us every episode, so you never know what's going to happen next.
That's true, and I think we've got a couple of really good episodes coming. That I think Slattman hinted at, the previews for next week and the next few weeks actually. Look like we
3 more episodes.
No, middle of October, it's all going to be done. We're going to cry. All right, guys. Let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.